Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk about the CPU. Now, the CPU stands for the Central Processing Unit, and it gets that name because all other components within the computer depend on it, so it's like a centralized processing unit. The main objective of the CPU is to process data. Now, it knows to process this data because of something called the instruction set. Now, the instruction set is a set of commands that the CPU runs. Instructions can be as simple as read, write, move commands that direct data to different hardware on the motherboard. One of the couple CPU operations are refreshing memory, checking for communication between devices, monitoring the system devices itself, and performing any other program duties that it's required to do. Now, when people think of upgrading their CPU specifically, one thing that obviously comes to mind is speed. Now, the CPU speed refers to how fast the CPU can process data and commands, and it's measured in hertz. There's a couple other things to keep in mind, like the performance level. You have your low performing CPUs, more on the cheaper end of PCs, like an introductory computer type thing. Average performing CPUs, more ones like me and you are using. Well, I should say mine is more high end. I do more programming and stuff like that. In higher performing CPUs, you're making movies, playing video games, recording music, all those things. And there's a couple other questions that you would ask, like, what are you trying to achieve? Will the upgraded CPU fit in the motherboard socket or slot? That's one major thing to keep in mind, though. Will the chipset and BIOS support the upgraded processor? And does the motherboard bus speed rather than the CPU speed limit the increase in speed that you desire? Now, when you hear bus speed, those are the circuits located on the motherboard, and they help all the devices communicate with one another. And one thing you want to make sure of is that if the bus speed can't keep up with the upgraded CPU speed, you will have spent all that money for no reason, and your computer's not going to be able to keep up with how fast your CPU is working. So yeah, those are things about the CPU. So yeah.